The story begins in 1997, showing a girl named Ji-young standing in an elevator. She quickly glances at the security camera before trying to hide in the corner so she won't be seen. Ji-young reaches in her pocket and takes out 2 boiled eggs. Feeling hungry, she quietly eats them. Ji-young works as an elevator girl in a fancy shopping mall, where she wears high heels and stands in the elevator for hours every day. While Ji-young is still eating, her boss, Manager Park, enters the elevator. She starts choking on the egg but has to pretend like nothing happened. Park sniffs the air, notices a smell, and yells at Ji-young not to eat or fart in the elevator. Even though Ji-young feels like crying, she forces herself to smile in front of the mall customers. In another incident, Park barges into the elevator girls' changing room without knocking, making all the girls panic as they're changing clothes. With his power, Park purposely touches the girls, who come from poor families. Ji-young gets secretly angry about this, and Park, noticing her attitude, scolds and insults her for standing up to him too often. After choosing his favorite elevator girl, Park asks her to accompany the company's clients. Even though the girls don't want to, they are too scared to refuse. A few days later, Park suddenly announces that the department store has decided to remove the elevator operator position. The elevator girls will slowly be let go, so they are advised to quit on their own. At that time, the girls are confused since they don't have other job skills. Ji-young feels angry because the company didn't give them any warning before firing them. Bravely, Ji-young rips up the paper listing the names of the elevator girls who would be fired, which makes Park slap her. Sometime earlier, a middle-aged woman named Ma, a beauty expert in Korea, approached Ji-young and offered her the chance to enter a beauty contest. Ma thought Ji-young had the perfect face and body for the Miss Korea pageant. But there, Ji-young didn't feel confident about this, but Ma insisted she never picks the wrong talent. In fact, a few days ago, another beauty expert had also come looking for Ji-young while she was working as an elevator girl. Ji-young turned down the offer. However, back in school, Ji-young was known as a beautiful student with a great figure, and many boys admired her. Before Ma met Ji-young, she took one of her trainees on a crowded subway ride. Ma asked the girl to walk through the busy crowd, wearing only a bright blue swimsuit. The girl became the center of attention, and soon, many men surrounded her, making comments about her body. This caused her to cry when she got off the train. After that incident, Ma, who was a former beauty queen, decided to search for a new candidate in different places, including a nightclub. It was at this nightclub that Ma noticed Ji-young working part-time as a dancer. Seeing Ji-young's well-proportioned body, Ma became interested in offering her a chance to compete in Miss Korea. However, Ma lost track of Ji-young, who left the club in a taxi. Ma then told her secretary to find out more about Ji-young. Later on, Ma finally met Ji-young, who was working as an elevator girl. Ma offered Ji-young the chance to become a Miss Korea candidate and asked her to take off her clothes to prove her confidence. Without hesitation, Ji-young took off her skirt, impressing Ma with her boldness. Soon after, Ji-young says goodbye to Ma and soon runs into her high school classmate June. June tells Ji-young that he is now the head of a big cosmetics company and invites her to join a beauty contest on Jeju Island. June wants to sign Ji-young up for the contest and win it so he can save his company. He picks Ji-young because her beauty has always attracted a lot of attention from men. In the past, June and Ji-young were close, but after they graduated, June got accepted into a top university. Meanwhile, Ji-young had to work as an elevator operator, and because of this, June's mother didn't allow him to stay in touch with Ji-young. Now, another one of their old classmates, Lee, who owns an investment company, advises June that if he wants Lee to invest money in his cosmetics company, June needs to win the Miss Korea title. So, June decides to go to Jeju Island and enter the competition, hoping to win the 5 million won prize and pay off his company's debts. While spending time with Ji-young, June lies and says that his company isn't short on money, but is just looking for new talent to become Miss Korea. June promises to cover all of Ji-young's expenses during the competition and even give her all the prize money if she wins. And Ji-young, who wants to quit her job as an elevator girl, agrees to join the beauty contest. However, she chooses to go with Ma, who has more experience, instead of June. When Ji-young arrives at the registration place, she realizes that the whole building is a beauty salon owned by Ma, unfortunately. After seeing other contestants who are better educated and have more perfect bodies, Ji-young loses her confidence and decides not to sign up for the contest. After going home, Ji-young calls her best friend and says she's thinking about getting surgery to change her breast size. To pay for the surgery, Ji-young decides to accept Jun's offer and win the selection competition on Jeju Island. She then submits her leave request to Park before flying to Jeju with Jun and some people from his company. When Ji-young arrives on Jeju Island, she feels happy, especially since it's her first time traveling far from home. On the way to their lodging, Jun's team suddenly realizes they forgot to bring Ji-young's costume. Luckily, Ji-young offers to handle it herself. To save money, Jun and his team lie to Ji-young, telling her they couldn't book a hotel and ask her to stay at a public bathhouse. Without suspecting anything, Ji-young trusts Jun and his friends. On the day of practice for the contestants, Ji-young is surprised to run into Ma in the bathroom. It turns out Ma has been invited to be a judge for the competition. Ma lowers her voice and asks Ji-young not to let anyone know they know each other, to avoid misunderstandings. Ma also warns Ji-young that she won't let her join her beauty salon if Ji-young scores low in the competition. During practice, Ji-young, who was confident at first, starts to feel discouraged when she sees the other contestants, who are more experienced than her. That night, Jun takes Ji-young to a fancy restaurant to entertain the company executive sponsoring the event. Jun does this on purpose to secure an investment from the sponsor. When Ji-young realizes this, she feels disappointed because her ex-boyfriend is using her. Upset, she plans to leave, but then Lee, the sponsor, walks in. At the same time, Jun quickly steps out of the room. Soon after, Lee compliments Ji-young for looking good that night and offers to be her sponsor. Feeling insulted, Ji-young tries to leave, but Lee belittles her, saying she is wasting her beauty. Outside, Jun starts feeling guilty for using Ji-young and decides to go back and get her. Ji-young, still angry, slaps Jun before walking away. Jun then pours a drink for Lee as an apology. Meanwhile, Ji-young stands outside the hotel, crying sadly. After Jun finishes his drink, Ji-young returns and says she will continue participating in the competition. The next day, Ji-young asks her friend to go to a shopping mall to steal a hanbok from one of the department stores. At the mall, Ji-young's friend runs into Park. Knowing that Ji-young is in a beauty contest, Park calls her, threatening to make her life miserable. However, Ji-young doesn't seem to care because her biggest problem is that she doesn't have a costume for the beauty contest. Ji-young even pawns her gold necklace to get enough money to buy a hanbok for the competition. Later, Ji-young tells Jun about her decision to compete in Seoul under Ma's company. Hearing this, Jun apologizes for using her, but Ji-young ignores his apology. During the competition, all the contestants go up on stage to greet everyone. Even though Ji-young feels a bit nervous, she doesn't seem any less confident than the other contestants, who come from wealthy families. In the next round of judging, all the contestants dance to a popular singer's song. Ji-young, who is good at dancing, easily shows off her best moves. Unfortunately, in the middle of the dance, her high heel suddenly breaks. Despite this, Ji-young stays calm and keeps dancing. It turns out that one of her rivals had snuck into the dressing room before the competition and messed with Ji-young's shoes. Some of the audience is worried as Ji-young stumbles, but she refuses to give up. Not wanting to face Park again, Ji-young fights through, dancing barefoot to win the competition. Seeing what happened, Jun rushes to help Ji-young, who is frustrated by the situation. At that time, Ji-young is determined to become Miss Korea, and Ma, who approaches her, is even more convinced that Ji-young is the right candidate. Ji-young agrees to go with Ma, while Jun tries to chase after them, saying he will find Ji-young. The next day, Ji-young returns to the department store and submits her resignation to Park. Ji-young asks Park not to fire her friend, but Park refuses. Later, Ji-young tries to save her friend, even offering 6 months of her salary to Park. Hearing this offer, Park happily agrees, patting Ji-young on the shoulder as a sign of approval. Next, Ji-young has to say goodbye to her job as an elevator girl and start her journey to becoming a beauty queen. She has already spent 10 years in that place and doesn't want to waste her youth anymore. However, Ji-young still feels insecure about her small breast size. A few days later, Ji-young begins her training at Ma's place along with other girls. At that time, Ma trains them hard, but Ji-young is determined not to give up so she can compete next year. After practice, Ma asks all the girls to shower together, which makes Ji-young freeze, feeling embarrassed about her body. While the other girls head to the bathroom, Ji-young stays lying on the floor. After a while, she goes to the bathroom once the girls have left. Ma, noticing that Ji-young is not used to showering with others, tells her there's no need to feel ashamed. Ji-young then shares her insecurity. At the same time, Ma's former assistant, Director Young, who is now her rival, shows up with her students in the changing room. Ma and Young clearly don't get along, and even their students start arguing. When Ma arrives, Young begins mocking her, and Ma fires back with insults. Seeing Ji-young, Young also makes a comment about her body, which angers Ma then. Ma pushes Young, sparking chaos as the girls begin fighting with each other. After the fight ended, Ma called Ji-young to talk. After measuring Ji-young's chest, Ma suggested that Ji-young should get plastic surgery to increase her chances of winning the competition. Ji-young replied that she couldn't do it, as plastic surgery was too expensive. Meanwhile, June had plans to move closer to where Ji-young lived to convince her to join the beauty contest. When June arrived at Ji-young's house, Ji-young was surprised to see him there. In front of her family, June suddenly said that Ji-young was planning to participate in the beauty contest, where she would be showing off her body in a swimsuit for all the men to see. And the elders, who had a traditional mindset, were furious when they heard this. Ji-young's mother had passed away, leaving her to be raised by her grandfather, uncle, and two brothers, which were men who had looked after her. They all said they would never allow Ji-young to show her body in public. They hoped Ji-young would keep her job as an elevator operator, find a good man, get married, and have lots of children. Ji-young's older brother even bluntly told her that she had no chance of winning. The elders were so angry that they brought out scissors, threatening to cut off all of Ji-young's hair. Seeing this, June quickly stepped in to stop them, getting his ear hurt in the process. In the room, Ji-young tended to June's injury, and at the same time, Ma arrived at Ji-young's house to convince her family about Ji-young's decision to join the beauty contest. Ma then pulled out an album full of photos of previous Miss Korea winners, all of whom had been trained by her. These women were once ordinary, low-level workers, but after winning Miss Korea, some of them married into rich families. Others entered the entertainment industry and became famous actresses. Having Miss Korea listed on their resume gave them priority when applying for jobs, and their lives completely changed. After hearing Ma's explanation, Ji-young's family realized that Ma was there to persuade them. Even though they thought that kind of life sounded amazing, they still refused to let Ji-young participate in the competition. They only wanted her to live a normal, peaceful life like everyone else. After that, Ji-young's family asked Ma to leave. At that moment, Ji-young couldn't hold back and declared that she was going to join the beauty contest and even get breast enlargement surgery. Her family was shocked, including June, who questioned Ji-young's decision to have plastic surgery. At that time, June blamed Ma for making Ji-young want to do this. Because of this, Ji-young's family locked her in a room and closely watched her, not allowing her to meet Ma. However, Ji-young didn't give up and started working out regularly to shape her body. When June noticed how hard Ji-young was working, he told her not to push herself too much. However, Ji-young had already made up her mind to join the competition with Ma there. June argued with Ji-young, insisting that if she joined his team, she wouldn't need surgery and could still win. Ji-young, still upset with June for using her before, told him to stay away from her. June then confessed that he truly liked Ji-young and didn't want her to have surgery because it wasn't good for her body. But Ji-young didn't change her mind and stuck to her decision to go with Ma. The next day, Ji-young went to a plastic surgery clinic. Coincidentally, the clinic was offering a free cosmetic surgery promotion for patients who agreed to have their before and after photos posted on the clinic's website. The clinic assured Ji-young that they would never reveal the clients' faces. Ji-young was interested in the offer, but the doctor told her that she needed a thorough checkup first, which made Ji-young a bit suspicious. Still determined to win the Miss Korea title, Ji-young decided to go through with it. On another day, June met with Ma and Ji-young to insist that he could help Ji-young compete without her needing plastic surgery. Ma told him that the decision was entirely up to Ji-young. Ji-young then confirmed that she would do whatever it takes to win the Miss Korea title. Frustrated, June warned Ji-young that she would regret not choosing him. That night, June approached Ji-young again, trying to convince her one more time. June admitted that he didn't want to hurt her. Ji-young responded by saying that June wasn't an expert in beauty competitions like Ma was. If she followed June, she could easily be eliminated in the first round. But there, June didn't give up and kept reassuring Ji-young that she could trust him, even though he wasn't from the beauty industry like Ma despite his current bad luck and lack of money. June was confident he could help Ji-young have a happy life in the future. At that time, Ji-young was deeply moved by June's words and started to tear up. However, despite his sincerity, Ji-young still decided to stay with Ma. In the following days, Ji-young trained hard. When she got home, she didn't stop practicing, trying to get the body she wanted. During her workout, June suddenly showed up and told her that he would pay for her breast enlargement surgery, but only if Ji-young agreed to work with him. June then pulled out a thick envelope of money, explaining that he had sold his old house to get it. June just wanted to prove he could help Ji-young reach her dream. After going back to her room, Ji-young felt touched by what June had done for her. The next morning, Ji-young called June to have breakfast with her family, and her attitude toward him had changed completely. While June was waiting for the bus, he realized that Ji-young was being nice to him because she had decided to go through with a free breast enlargement surgery at the hospital and wasn't listening to his warnings. At the same time, Ji-young went with Ma to the hospital for the surgery. As Ji-young lay on the operating table, June suddenly arrived at the hospital and placed his money on the table. He couldn't stand the thought of Ji-young using her photo to get free surgery. Then, June asked the nurses to delete all the pictures taken before the surgery. Ji-young, already under anesthesia and starting to lose consciousness, didn't hear June calling her. Soon after, Ji-young came out of the operating room, and June, who was waiting outside, looked worried about her. Without paying attention to June, Ji-young went to meet Ma, who was waiting for her surgery to finish. There, Ji-young quickly bowed and apologized to Ma because she had canceled the surgery. At the last moment before the operation, Ji-young was moved by June's sincerity and decided not to go through with it. This decision also meant that Ji-young chose not to compete with Ma's support. Hearing this, Ma was very disappointed, not just because Ji-young had betrayed her, but more so because Ji-young had chosen to compete with June, who had no experience in beauty contests. Then, Ma decided not to help Ji-young in the competition. At that time, Ji-young understood the consequences of her choice and kept working hard so she could still compete without Ma's help. The next day, June instructed Ji-young to slap her own cheeks with both hands to help slim her face quickly. While Young took her students to a sauna to help them lose weight, June suggested that Ji-young lie on a ball and press her stomach to slim her waist. June insisted that this method was much better than what they did at the beauty salon. As the competition's qualifying round got closer, June wondered what to do with Ji-young's hair. He decided to take her to Ma's salon for a makeover. When they arrived, June said he was there to exchange ideas with Ma, and he emphasized that he didn't go to Yang's salon because he believed he and Ma were equals and needed to share knowledge. However, Ji-young quickly told the truth and begged Ma to style her hair just once. Surprisingly, Ma generously agreed to help Ji-young with her hair. At that moment, Ji-young transformed into a beautiful girl, and the other girls admired her. With the classic Korean beauty queen look, Ji-young appeared more elegant, and even her face looked slimmer. On the day of the competition, Ji-young rushed out of her house and forgot to bring her competition ticket. When she arrived at the location, all the contestants had to get their body measurements taken. With help from their beauty salons, each girl had her own tricks to make sure they passed to the next round. Ji-young, who didn't know these tricks, was shocked when she heard that her bust measurement had changed from 32 to 30. Ji-young asked the staff to measure her again, but they firmly refused. Unbeknownst to Ji-young, this was part of a secret plan by the competition sponsor, who didn't want her, representing June's company, to move on to the next round. Not only did her bust measurement shrink, but her height also decreased by 2 centimeters, and her face was recorded as 8 centimeters longer. This left June completely confused. At home, Ji-young's father found the beauty contest ticket she had been hiding from everyone. He and the family quickly decided to go to the competition to bring Ji-young back. Meanwhile, Ji-young was still using Jun's method to slim her face, while Ma's trainees were getting top-quality treatments. On the other hand, Yang was personally helping her trainees make their faces look smaller for the competition. Soon after, Jun went to the competition organizers to protest the unfair treatment Ji-young received. He asked them to let Ji-young move forward in the competition, but unfortunately, the organizers refused his request because Jun didn't have any powerful connections. Later, reporters began interviewing the contestants, which forced the organizers to give fair scores to everyone. This helped Ji-young turn things around, even though she had been behind in points compared to the other contestants. At the same time, Ji-young's family arrived at the competition gate, determined to take her home before she participated in the swimsuit show. In the waiting room, Yang's trainees started holding their breath and taping their waists to make their bodies look like hourglasses. They had to do this because they were all about to wear swimsuits, and their bodies needed to look perfect to earn high scores. Some contestants were even rumored to have undergone plastic surgery to achieve their beautiful bodies. On the other hand, Ma patiently guided her trainee, Kim, teaching her how to stand gracefully. Meanwhile, Ji-young was feeling panicked because Jun and his staff had no experience in this kind of competition. At that moment, Lee, who had a crush on Ji-young, tried to meet her to give her a pair of earrings for the swimsuit competition. Even though no other jewelry was allowed, earrings were acceptable and could make contestants look more elegant. Jun didn't know this, but even though Ji-young liked the idea of wearing the earrings, she didn't want to hurt Jun's pride by accepting Lee's gift. Realizing his limitations, he told Ji-young not to refuse someone's kindness, so she agreed to take Lee's gift. When Ji-young stepped out for the swimsuit competition, she unexpectedly ran into her grandfather and father, who had come to stop her. After seeing Ji-young in a swimsuit, her father almost fainted. Without saying anything, he slapped her hard, reminding her to think about her late mother. He said that Ji-young had ruined the family's reputation by joining a beauty contest that showed off her body. There, Ji-young cried and insisted that if her mother were still alive, she would support her. Ji-young believed her father and grandfather were too old-fashioned, but they ignored her explanation and tried to drag her home. At that moment, Ji-young signaled to Jun with her eyes, and he understood what she meant. Jun quickly grabbed Ji-young, and together they ran away, while Jun's other teammates struggled to hold back Ji-young's family. Ji-young and Jun then hurried to the swimsuit competition. Ji-young tried to keep her bad mood from affecting her performance. Unfortunately, a group of contestants suddenly appeared and pushed Ji-young into the bathroom. These girls were all Ma's trainees, upset with Ji-young. One of the girls pulled out Ji-young's padded inserts from her swimsuit and cut them into pieces with scissors. Their goal was to sabotage Ji-young's chances of getting a high score in the swimsuit competition. With the competition already underway, Ji-young didn't have enough time to prepare again. She forced a smile and got ready to face the judges. At that time, the contestants seemed to make mistakes and weren't focused, except for Yang's trainee, Sunju, who performed very well in that round. When Ji-young stepped onto the stage, Jun noticed something was wrong, and the judges also seemed disappointed with Ji-young's appearance due to her smaller bust size, which affected her overall look. During the announcement of the first round, only 5 girls would be selected to move on to the next stage. All the contestants, including Ji-young, felt nervous as they waited. When the chosen contestants were called, they were overjoyed, and luckily, Ji-young was called to the top 5, meeting everyone's expectations. Jun and the others were thrilled with her success. The competition then moved to the next stage, where the judges would choose the top 3 contestants from the 5. Ji-young did her best to control her nerves and keep smiling, while Jun and his friends clenched their fists, showing how nervous they were. Unfortunately, Ji-young didn't make it to the top 3, which caused her to cry. At that moment, Jun realized that he should have listened to Ma's company was now facing bankruptcy, and all of Ji-young's hard work had not paid off. Since only the top 3 could advance to the finals and compete for the national title, Ji-young now had to start looking for a job again. After the top 3 contestants were announced, Ma handed a piece of paper to a reporter, instructing them to give it to Sunju. When Sunju opened the paper, her face turned pale because Ma had discovered the secret she had been hiding. Faced with the constant flashes of the reporter's cameras, Sunju tried to keep smiling, even though her mind was racing with worry. On the other hand, Ma knew that Sunju was panicking now that someone had found out her secret. In the note, Ma asked if Sunju had been drinking malt syrup during the competition. Earlier, Ma had been in the contestants' dressing room and noticed a plastic bottle filled with a cloudy, white liquid. After tasting it, Ma realized it was malt syrup, which can enhance a woman's bust size. Drinking it before the measurements was considered cheating. Because of this, Ma was determined to find out who was secretly drinking it. Ma had noticed Sunju looking for something after finishing her makeup. Quietly, Ma kicked the plastic bottle towards Sunju, thinking it was her water bottle. Soon after, Sunju picked it up and drank it, not realizing what was inside. From Sunju's expression, Ma guessed that Sunju might be breastfeeding, which meant she had given birth. However, beauty contests had strict rules that disqualified women who had given birth from participating. In the present, Ma met with Sunju, hoping she would voluntarily give up her title. Sunju was confused and confided in Yang, admitting that she had a child before getting married. After learning that Ma knew Sunju's secret, Yang pretended to comfort Sunju while secretly planning how to remove her from the competition. Meanwhile, Ji-young, hearing about Sunju's situation, secretly contacted the organizers to report it, hoping this would allow her to move up to third place and compete in the finals. Unfortunately, Ji-young's efforts didn't work. Ji-young eventually had to look for a job again. Her father and uncle even brought gifts to Park, asking the manager to let Ji-young return to work at the mall. However, Park rejected their simple gifts and bluntly told her family that Ji-young had stolen from the mall to join the competition. He then humiliated the two older men by throwing the gifts on the ground and scattering the money from the envelope. On the other hand, Ji-young, who was at home, suddenly received a phone call telling her she could participate in the finals. Jun excitedly said it was Ji-young's luck for loving him. Ji-young felt grateful for Jun's support, not knowing that Lee had secretly helped her behind the scenes. Ji-young quickly packed her things to prepare for intense training. The next day, not wanting to burden Jun, Ji-young went to the training location alone, carrying her suitcase. At the training site, the other finalists competed to wear the most expensive limited edition wedding gowns. And Ji-young, who was deep in debt, could only find the cheapest dress through a roadside ad, but it was still too expensive for her. At that moment, Lee called and told Ji-young he had prepared an expensive dress for her because he didn't want the girl he liked to wear a cheap rented dress in the competition. When Ji-young tried on the dress, she looked stunning. That night, the red carpet ceremony for the competition officially began. Beautiful girls from all over the country arrived in luxury cars, wearing glamorous outfits, as media reporters lined both sides of the red carpet. The other contestants got a lot of attention, while Jun rushed to the venue with the dress he had rented. Ji-young struggled to pull her suitcase alone, once again refusing Lee's kindness because she didn't want to hurt Jun's pride. When training started, Ji-young returned to the dorm and got ready to shower. Unfortunately, she ran into the two girls who had previously ruined her clothes. By chance, they were placed in the same room. As Ji-young stepped into the bathroom, a large bucket of cold water poured over her from head to toe. Realizing it was done on purpose, she returned to the dorm to confront her bullies, and they ended up in a physical fight. Luckily, the competition organizers stepped in just in time. Since the fight happened in the dorm, each girl had 15 points deducted, and if they reached 30 points, they would be automatically disqualified from the competition. Besides that, the organizers announced that contestants were strictly forbidden from smoking, drinking, or being around men during the intensive training period. The main competition sponsor would also provide makeup for all contestants. The final winner would sign a contract to become a model for the sponsoring company. At that time, Ji-young was unhappy and pointed out that there was no such clause in the beauty contest agreement, especially since she was competing on behalf of Jun's cosmetics company. This made the organizers and sponsors very upset with Jun. They confronted Ji-young and Jun, bluntly stating that if Ji-young didn't want to sign the contract, she shouldn't expect to continue in the competition. Another day, Ji-young became the target of protesters who were against the beauty pageant. She was even hit by eggs thrown by the protesters. The protesters claimed that the pageant was unfair to women's appearances and demanded that the competition be stopped. During the swimsuit photo shoot, Ji-young, who was still having issues with the sponsor, faced difficulties, such as not being allowed to wear makeup and being given an uncomfortable pool mat. When she returned to the dorm, Ji-young found that someone had tampered with her high heels again. Worse, Sunju secretly added something to Ji-young's cosmetics to irritate her skin. Luckily, Ji-young's roommate, Kim, warned her about the altered cosmetics. The next day, both Sunju and Kim didn't perform well in the singing and dancing evaluations. On the other hand, Ji-young smiled confidently, as these were her strengths, allowing her to give her best performance in front of the judges. As expected, Ji-young's performance outshined all the other contestants. On the other hand, Sunju and Kim, seeing Ji-young as a threat, were jealous and upset with the high score Ji-young received. The director even added a wind effect to Ji-young's performance, making her look even more impressive. A little while later, the judges met before the swimsuit judging round began. Lee and Park were also invited as judges to help evaluate the contestants' total scores. The first criterion for judging the swimsuit round was the collarbone. In that meeting, the judges were instructed not to give Ji-young high scores because June had refused the sponsor company's contract offer. During the scoring event, Park was the first to raise his scorecard and gave Ji-young the lowest score in every category. Fortunately, Lee balanced it out by giving Ji-young the highest overall scores. After the evaluation, Park approached Ji-young and told her that the low scores were the consequence of not listening to him. Ji-young started to realize that her scores had been manipulated by several people, and it made her worry. Meanwhile, to avoid suspicion, Lee called Ji-young and informed her about her total score. He encouraged Ji-young to relax a bit before the upcoming practice. In the next round, all the contestants went on stage, one by one, singing and dancing in front of the audience. Under Yang's guidance, Kim purposely pretended to fall to grab the camera's attention, making sure no cameras were focused on Sunju's performance. Meanwhile, Ji-young watched footage of people supporting her backstage, which touched her heart and made her feel grateful for their encouragement. During the contestants' performances, Yang cheered loudly for her trainees from the audience, leaving Ma speechless at the commotion. June, worried about Ji-young's performance, finally felt relieved when he saw Ji-young's group impressing the crowd. Ji-young showed no signs of stage fright, and even while wearing high heels, her dance steps remained graceful, causing Yang to fall silent in her seat. When Ji-young started singing, the audience was amazed by how steady her voice was while dancing. Ma regretted not signing a contract with Ji-young earlier. As the Miss Korea final drew closer, the dressing room atmosphere became more intense. All the girls used every moment to prepare for the final round. Seeing Ji-young alone, Ma asked why she didn't have an assistant. Ji-young smiled and said she could do her own makeup. Even though Ma wanted to help, she couldn't, so she advised Ji-young to use the mirror in the bathroom to do her makeup. Ji-young followed Ma's suggestion and hurried to the bathroom. Meanwhile, Lee arrived with a makeup artist for Ji-young, knowing that June couldn't be relied on in such an important moment. Surprisingly, Ji-young refused Lee's help again, especially after realizing Lee's feelings for her. She didn't want to create any misunderstandings with June. Stubbornly, Ji-young left Lee and went into the bathroom to do her own hair and makeup. As the final night drew near, Ji-young's family, who had supported her dreams, arrived at the Miss Korea competition to cheer her on. Once the event started, each contestant took turns introducing themselves to the audience. When it was Ji-young's turn, her sincere and humble attitude left a positive impression on the judges. During the highly anticipated swimsuit round, the judges gave scores to each contestant one by one. When it was Ji-young's turn, her hard work finally paid off, earning her a score of 8.4, a high score compared to many of the earlier contestants. Kim, with her degree from a prestigious university, impressed the judges and received the highest score of 8.5. After the swimsuit judging was over, Ji-young, who had earned a good score, smoothly advanced to the top 15. During the break, Ji-young paged June, hoping for a response, but she didn't receive any reply. In another room, the judges discussed changing the traditional beauty pageant rules. They decided to expand the judging criteria, no longer focusing only on contestants with high education or prestigious jobs. This change aimed to give opportunities to contestants from all backgrounds and award extra points to those with natural beauty and no plastic surgery. These adjustments increased Ji-young's chances of winning the pageant. As the competition continued, Ji-young rose to the top along with Kim. Ji-young also received a special award from the sponsor company, while Sunju and two other contestants took third place. When another contestant was announced as the third-place winner, it meant that either Ji-young or Kim would win the Miss Korea title. The host then announced the final results. With her hard work and perseverance, Ji-young won the Miss Korea title. This result shocked her family, who couldn't believe that their daughter and niece had achieved such an incredible accomplishment. Even Park, who had once doubted her, was astonished by the outcome. After winning the Miss Korea title, Ji-young received a grand prize of 20 million won, a 50,000 won crown, and the opportunity to represent South Korea in an international beauty pageant. However, throughout the event, Ji-young still hadn't seen June. It turned out that June's business had completely failed, leaving him in massive debt, and creditors had taken all the equipment from his factory. When June finally appeared, Ma questioned why June disappeared when Ji-young needed help and only showed up after she had won. June tried to defend himself, but when Ji-young saw his injuries and learned about the problems at his factory, she gave June her 20 million won stock certificate so he could rebuild his business. Although he was hesitant at first, June eventually accepted the help and became Ji-young's manager. After her victory, Ji-young's fame skyrocketed, and many major TV stations wanted to interview her. In this situation, she hoped to receive a lot of advertisement offers. Despite her newfound fame and wealth, Ji-young didn't spend her money on luxury items for herself. Instead, she used her earnings to help June rebuild his business. One day, Ji-young received a call from Park, inviting her to be a spokesperson at the department store. Ji-young agreed, and when she arrived at the department store, she remembered her long struggle as an elevator girl for years. Park then tried to approach Ji-young, now a famous figure, and even apologized to Ji-young's family for his past behavior. He also returned the salary Ji-young had lost when she resigned from the company. At the end, Park apologized to Ji-young for his bad attitude toward her all this time. Ji-young told him to return the money he had taken from other employees. Park agreed to that request and promised to fix the issue as soon as possible. The series ends. The moral lesson from this series is if you ever become Miss Korea, remember to ask for your lost wages and make sure your old boss returns all the stolen money because fame doesn't pay the bills. But it sure helps with receipts.